This is my first project for YouTube, and what I'm trying to create here is a drum sander. At the moment I have the frame, which my father-in-law has very kindly made for me. Very strongly constructed with mortise and tenon joints, and also hardwood areas for the pillow bearings. This is the worktop which I'll be using for the top of the table area, and over here is the drum that I've already made up. Got the pillow bearings and aluminium 20mm shaft, all connected but needs adjusting. Then we've got the 1.5 horsepower motor and pulley already on, various nuts and bolts, and the pulley to go on the drum sander. And also here are the hinges or piano hinges for the tabletop and also for the motor mounting. The first job to do is to fix the pillow bearings down. What I'm going to do now is drill a couple of pilot holes and then use coach bolts. The pilot holes would stop the hardwood splitting. So now we have the drum installed, bolted down, even either side on the roller. Right, we're now ready to mark out and start cutting the tabletop for it. This is the underside of the tabletop with a mark at just slightly wider than the drums. So here's our tabletop cut. Just need some sides on it, to which I'm going to use a piece of flooring or old flooring, which I'll cut down in half and then mount either side. Well, there's the table section with the sides nailed on, and also the cutouts for the area where the shaft goes, so the table can be lifted right up high. I've just laid the table section in just to have a quick look to see how it's going to look. It's propped up on a couple of bits of the wood at the moment, and obviously no height adjustment at the moment, but all things to come. I now have the frame laying on its back, and so far I have inserted a piece of hardwood on top of the back rail with an angle on it, so the bed sits on it and then comes forward and rests onto the front rail. I've also affixed the piano hinge, and I'm now going to put the second set of screws that hold the piano hinge into the table. 2 screws are installed so far on the piano hinge. I'm now going to stand it upright, flip it over and make sure it's parallel between the 2 uprights, and also I'll then put the drum sander, just lay it back on and make sure the 2 cutouts on the table sides come up underneath the shaft on the drum. So I've turned it over now. I'm just going to check the operation and make sure they fit up nicely correctly either side of the shaft, and also we're nice and parallel down alongside the frame. So that's the table installed, and now we should be able to sand anything from about 3.5 inches thick right down to almost 0. Next thing to do is install the lifting gear for the front of the table. I've now put the table lifting mechanism on, pretty much the same as what most designs seem to be from what I've seen on the internet, with a slight modification, which is actually a roller skate wheel with its bearings on top, because quite a few people reported that the screw thread will eventually cut into the bottom of the table, so the bearing on the roller wheel should hopefully stop that and lift quite smoothly. As you can see at the moment, the drum's missing at the moment. I'm actually having the drum fiberglass. This should make it long lasting and pretty hard wearing. I've got to thank my friend on that, from Kevin at Classic Mouldings, who's doing that for me. The next part I've got to make is mounting for the motor. Unfortunately the motor I've got is face mounted rather than foot mounted, so I've got to make a bracket up for that. So the next thing to do is to cut this nice thick bit of plate, which happens to be an old boiler baffle, but we've got it marked out now. It's going to take quite a bit of effort to cut the circle out in the middle for the motor rotor and drill the holes, etc. And made it into the mounting bracket for the electric motor. Temporary bolts at the moment, obviously they shouldn't stick out like that. It's not the prettiest job, but it's nice and strong. I've now installed the motor on the motor mount, which is obviously connected to the frame. Had a slight technical problem, which was when the capacitor cover was in position, as it lifted into its full height, it would hit onto the frame, so I notched it out. And then unfortunately, when I then lowered the table, on the table's lowest position, then this also hit the capacitor cover. So I've had to disconnect the capacitor cover. I'm going to have to remount the capacitor either down on the frame here or somewhere over here. We've got plenty of wires to connect into. I'll just show you the front of the motor, still with the temporary screws on it. As you can see, we've got, let me have it in there, a nice bit of travel for the motor here, so that will keep the weight on the pulley when they're installed.